We're going to talk politics and the economy. Israelis are heading to the polls to decide who will lead them through increasingly complex times. And while the country's security has long been a centerpiece of the campaign, the economy is also demanding more attention as well. For more, we're joined by Israel's Minister for Economic Affairs to the U.S., Eli Groner. Welcome to the show. Great to have you here. Let me start by, perhaps you can walk us through the importance of, and some of the things I've read, there's a lot of concern about the economy. What are the top one or two concerns with respect to that?
Well, we're always concerned about the economy. It's part of our jobs. But quite frankly, we've been remarkably resilient in what we've been able to do, particularly given what's been going on around the world. I think based on the elections we saw in Israel today, we're very encouraged. It looks like there'll be a stable government. And one of the first things that a government needs to provide is stability to an economy. I think the other thing that we're very concerned about, or watching and on top of, is consumption around the world. We're an export-based economy. A lot of our economy is based on people consuming our goods and services outside of Israel. And when consumption around the world goes down, it's a risk for us.
Well, that segues into the next question, which you partially answered, which was, what's the greatest challenge as you look at the economy, because you have both the exports and you also have domestic consumption as well. You mentioned the macro side of it. Is that the greatest challenge in 2013 to the economy?
I think the biggest challenge for 2013 is making sure that there's a market for our goods and services. We're not a very big country. We don't have hundreds of millions of consumers. We have only 8 million local consumers, which means if we want to survive and thrive, we need people around the world to consume our goods and services. And that means that we always have to be on top of people, be ahead of the problem, and provide services that people will pay a premium for.
We introduced the segment earlier, and we talked a little bit about some of the security issues and, of course, the economy. I want to tie the two together because Israel is in a very unique situation where you do have serious security issues, but at the same time, you've got a surprisingly thriving economy from people all over the world that continue to invest in Israel. How do you balance the two? And when people come to you with these concerns, what do you tell them?
Every country has its own risk, or perceived risk, when looked at by international investors. And in Israel, there's no question that the security situation or the perceived security situation is a real risk. But the facts of the matter are that Israel's products, services, innovation, technology, resiliency has been able to overcome all those risks. And another thing that people know is that if you look at historic performance throughout all the security issues we've had over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, the Israeli market has been remarkably resilient in that it has withstood all these challenges and come out thriving beyond. And the resiliency you see in the technology sector and the economy at large is true amongst Israelis in general. When the security issues become really, really poignant, Israelis tend to band together.
I want to follow up on that. Israel is known in many circles for its innovation. It's known for its technology and also a lot of startups as well. Are there other areas of the economy, and I'm sure there's a couple of answers to this, but what other areas of the economy and sectors would you say there are significant opportunities for when you, as a global investor watching this program?
Well, obviously, we get a lot of attention to our technology sector and startups and Startup Nation. But there's a lot going on in Israel besides technology. A couple of areas that are very exciting in particular going forward are healthcare in general and medical devices specifically, as well as energy. If you look at the big challenges facing the world, healthcare costs are going up. And it's very, very important around the world to sort of constrain those healthcare costs. And the way to do that is by keeping people healthier via medical devices and by keeping the costs of pharmaceuticals down, and that's typically done with generic drugs, which is Israel's a leader in as well.
You make it sound very easy, and maybe I'll take a step back here. And a large part of our audience obviously is from Asia, and there's places like Singapore and many parts of China who are also trying to build a thriving technology or biotech type of business. You have that unique experience and background. What counsel would you provide other countries or regions who are trying to do a similar model, and they see you and they go, that's successful, how do we?
Listen, obviously there are a lot of factors involved in creating a successful economy, and I don't want to sound too presumptuous because Israel, at the end of the day, is just a small country. But I would say that the important thing is to cultivate an environment, if you're boiling it down to its essence, where innovation and ingenuity is treasured. You want your best and brightest minds to go to earth, wind, and fire, creating new products that will make the world a better place. And if you can create an environment where that's highly regarded, you're going to have the best people trying to create new things.
Eli, thank you very much for your time on Biz Asia America. We'd love to have you back again.
Pleasure.
Time allows.
Thanks for having me.
All right, with that, we send it to Mike Walter. Is the election results you're following from the Israeli parliamentary elections? Mike Walter with World News.
That's right, Phil. The Israeli election appears to be far closer than the polls predicted. Still, based on the exit polling, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will win a third term. Voters went to the polls on Tuesday, and for the first time in years, they said the biggest issue on their minds was not the Mideast peace process, but rather those domestic economic woes we were just hearing about. Still, though, Netanyahu's policy on Palestinian issues like settlements and rocket attacks are proving to be important. CCTV correspondent Stephanie Freid spent the day with voters and reports on the issues that matter most to them.
Yafit lives in the West Bank settlement Ariel, home to 17,500 Jews. International law says she and her community members are living illegally on occupied Palestinian land. She believes she is on biblical land granted to the Jews by God. So on election day, she wants to choose the mortals who will best serve her interests.
I didn't decide. I'm not sure. Bibi Bennett. We will see inside.
But in the booth, she makes a choice.
In the end, I prefer Bibi because I think that it's very, very strong. We need somebody that is strong, that you have experience, because we country with a lot of problems. And I think that you know how to talk in the world, so I think it's important.
Yafit isn't the only one who came to the polls undecided. Many Israelis came to cast their vote not knowing exactly who they were going to vote for, including those on the opposite end of the political spectrum. A 20-minute drive away in Tel Aviv, Ohad arrives at his polling station knowing the direction he wants the country to take, but not fully sure of which party he'll choose to influence that movement.
I want to change the course the country is going, and I want to take it to a more liberal course. I think the current path is dangerous for Israel, dangerous for our foreign relations, our economy. Everything is going wrong.
Post-vote, he is satisfied with his choice, saying he opted for central liberal parties that will have more leverage to effect change from inside the government. Yafit and Ohad's choices are radically different, but both want their votes to count, even if the forecast predicts Benjamin Netanyahu as Israel's ongoing prime minister.
And it appears Netanyahu has done just that, winning a third term as Prime Minister. Stephanie Freid joins us live from Tel Aviv. Stephanie, give us a sense of the balance of power right now. How are things going to change? Or will they?
Well, right now, as it appears, according to the exit polls, according to the major networks here, Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party took far fewer seats than were predicted. The party had merged together with an ultra-nationalist party. They had predicted that they would take 46 seats in the parliament. They came out, it looks like, with 31 or 32. That's a hit of about 9 seats. So the party members, ministers that I spoke with this evening at their headquarters at Likud, they're very disappointed. What that means is that very right bloc that Benjamin Netanyahu was holding on to or was heading up for these past years may be shaken up somewhat. And now one party that emerged, there is a future party which is more centrist. They emerged as a surprise entity in this election. They have far more seats than were predicted. The prime minister will now possibly have to, quote-unquote, romance that party to form a coalition, and that means concessions for the prime minister, concessions that could play out in the international arena in the form of negotiations with Palestinians, economic reform, some separation of church and state, which this other party, the future party, their platform was running on. So a lot hanging in the balance here, and this is being called a surprise election right now.
What about voter turnout? You gave us a snapshot of how conflicted some of these voters were, but was this well watched? Were people out in force?
People absolutely were out in force, Mike. In fact, the Central Elections Committee is saying that this was a record turnout, voter turnout year. And historically, the belief is that when there is high voter turnout, that high voter turnout means or translates into further center or left results, and that's what we're seeing. The voter turnout was the highest, they're saying, since 1999. It's the highest in the past 4 elections. Predicted about 75% of the eligible voters here, that's 5.6 million, came out to vote. So yes, people did come out, they did vote, and we're seeing the results.
Stephanie Freid, live for us in Tel Aviv. Thanks so much.